Hi, good morning, everybody. So we left off yesterday. I made a little boo-boo. I could have gone like 3 more lines and we would have sort of finished that. But we did not do that, which is fine. So Chazar is always good. So we were discussing a case of we had a stira machlekes, or contradiction, in Brises regarding an oven that was heated up by kilayim or orla, some sort of forbidden source of wood, right? And then, so if it was the first time using an oven, so one of them just says, one brisa says let it cool off, and the other brisa wanted to say that you have to break it, destroy it, because now the forbidden isser is built into the oven, and every time in the future the oven would be turned on, the oven would join with whatever new fuel it is, and the two of them would heat up a product, and therefore that'll be zeh, that'll be us. So we wanted to know what we said was no, it's not a kasha. One is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and which sheet of Rabbi Eliezer, what the Gemara was asking. So we wanted to say from a case of Rabbi Eliezer, who was talking about a case of when there was leaven, I guess, that some sore that fell, that caused something to rise, and it was two combinations of items of truma and chulin, and there was an opinion that said, Rabbi Eliezer said that you basically go after the last one, and even though each one independently was not enough, but since they're combined, just combined together, and whichever one was put in last, that's the one that counts. And Abaye over there explaining Rebbe Eliezer says that when the last one comes in, it's because we also have to go ahead and take out the new one. So what do we see from over there? We saw Alma Zevzeh Gorim Aser, right? So we see from there that Zevzeh, you have two things combining, right, to help. So though it goes after both things, and therefore in this case you have to go ahead and take out the last one. So therefore it's only the truma, and therefore zev gorim would be aser. So the Gemara says umimai the time of Rabbi Eliezer by. Who says Rabbi Eliezer goes like a bay? Dilma time of Rabbi Eliezer b'shum the acha achronim ba. Perhaps Rabbi Eliezer doesn't say you have to go ahead and remove. Let's say the first one that was there, whatever Saor was there first, you take that out. And the reason why you go for the last one is because that was the last one there and the other one was removed, right? Maybe it means Loshna Kadam Vasila Gazir. So Loshna Kadam Vasila Loshna like Yudim Vasila Gazir. It doesn't make a difference whether or not you take out the first one, you always go after the last one. And if that's the case, right? So then the last case it would be Aser, Aval Vas Achas. But if they would fall at the same time, then Hakinami the Shari. Maybe over there wouldn't be the last one, and therefore it would be Mutter. Right, so therefore maybe zevazeh gorim is mutter. So therefore the Gemara says no, that is not the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, it must be a different shita of Rabbi Eliezer. So Ella, Rabbi Eliezer, the Atzeh Asherah. Rather, we're around 7-8 lines from the top of Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, and we're talking about the wood of an Asherah tree, a tree that was used for avodah zarah. The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. If one who goes ahead and takes wood from a tree that was used for avodah zarah, so it's asbahana. Or if he goes ahead and he heats up an oven, chadash yutatz. If it's a new oven, then go ahead and break it down, right? Which is similar to the brisa we learned before. Yashan, if it's an older one, then yutzan. Go ahead and let it cool down. If he goes ahead and he bakes in it bread, then it's aser bahana. And not only that, but nisarva b'acheros, even if it gets mixed up with one and another one, kulon aser bahana. All of them are aser bahana, since it's a avodah zarah. There's a machlokes as to why it's not batal. But even if it's a sveka, right, goes into one combination and from there goes into another one. Maybe that's the challah, right? It's a davar chashuv, and maybe that's the challah that was baked using the heat, the source of avodah zarah, and therefore it's not batal. So
that's where he knew it was from a Asherah tree, right? It wasn't just that it happened to be from a Asherah; it's what he intended to use Asherah wood.
On that piece of bread, right? But then that piece of bread got mixed up with other bread, and we don't know which one's which. Okay. So we say the suffix doesn't make a difference. And even if you take one from that group of 10, and maybe it is, and you put in another group of 10, so now it's basically 1 out of 100, right? Or with 1,000, whatever it is, it's never batal. So we see over here that any bread heated up from the shera is considered to be aser b'hana. And Rabbi Eliezer Amer, Yelich Hanoli Amamelech, right? He says basically that the value of it basically is that is Asr Bahana, right? You can go ahead and send it off into the Yam Melech. And Amr Lo, they said to him, Ein Paidin Avodah Zarah. And they said to him, no, if you go Yam Melech and you want to go ahead and basically transfer, right, that on the value of it onto something else, perhaps you could, but they said, no, you can't do it. There is no opinion for Avodah Zarah. But the point being in this case, right, we see that if Rabbi Eliezer holds that the combination of Isser, in other words, if we would reuse this oven, which would be Isser, and if we would use completely new good wood, the two of those together to heat up a new dish in the oven would be Asr. That's why I have to break it down. So you see clearly over here that the halach is Zev Zegarim is Asr. Maybe that's the opinion that we said earlier in our case. So Gemara says, no. Who says the case? That case is talking about Avodah Zarah, right? Atzei Ashira is Avodah Zarah, right? Our case, right? But our case of Orla, our case of Kilaya Kerem, right? Which are only standard lavim, not Avodah Zarah. Who says Zev Zegarim is Asr? Salim Kane. If you don't say that, then Aman Chamiyu. So who can we go ahead and say that the price is like? Right? And furthermore, tiny behead it says beferish. We have a brayso that said beferish that not only does Rabbi Eliezer say that Zev Zegarim is also when it comes to Avodah Zarah, but rather he even says Zev Zegarim is even all kol yisur Shabbatar. So therefore, it must be this shita of Rabbi Eliezer. Fine. Amar Abaye says Abaye. If you would hold, right, that basically Rebbe would hold Zev Zegarim is Asr. Now remember, in the case of the brayso we had yesterday, just looking back to that brayso. So the way the brayso worked, we had the machlokas. First you heat it up, and then first we talk about the oven. You break it, or then you don't break it. And then it says, if you go ahead and bake bread, right? Forget about the new oven. Let's say you bake bread with wood from Orla or wood from Kilai Kerem, right? Rebbe says the bread is Asr, and Chachamim say the bread is mutter. All right, so that was the case. That was the brayso over there. That was the brayso on Chavav Amabeis, right by the two dots. Now, so it says Abaye on that. Amar Abaye. If you hold that, now remember the case of Zev Zegarim is only the case of the reason to break the oven, right? When it comes to the bread, it's not, the bread is a different case. The bread is just something being heated up from forbidden fire, right? But Zev Zegarim means the reason why you have to break the oven is because the next time you use the oven, you're going to be using something mutter, which is the new wood, and aser, which is the oven, which has into it, cooked into there the iser, the iser. Anyway, so in Tim Salam Zev Zegarim aser, Rabbi Hainu, Rabbi Eliezer. You can say Zev Zegarim is aser. You can say Rabbi's like Rabbi Eliezer, and there he always holds that. Right, and the Tim Saloimar Zev Zegarim mutter. But however, if you say that Rabbi holds Zev Zegarim is mutter, and he says just the bread is aser, but the oven you don't have to go ahead and break. And the reason why you have to go ahead and the bread is aser because you have the flavor of the orla, the karim in the bread. However, hani ka'aros v'kaisas v'tzluchis asiri. If you go ahead and you heat up with the wood, right? You make bowls and cups and little little not plasticware, earthenware, right? It has to be made of cheres, and you make those, right? Those will be aser because of those. Whenever you go ahead and use them, that will be the source of the product that you're using, and those are aser. So kipligi b'tanar kadera. Therefore, the machlos will be the tanar kadera, which those two combine with the heat source. The other ones, the karos and the cups and the bowls, right? Those don't get heated. Those are just aser, and therefore those you can't use those in the future because those are aser. But when it comes to a tanar kadera, since those have to be used with a new source of heat, and therefore it'll be a case of zev zegarim. Right? So keep leaving b'tanav v'kedera. Laman demer zev zegarim aser. According to the one who says zev zegarim is aser, it'll be aser. Laman demer zev zegarim mutter. It'll be shari. It'll be mutter to use those because those only do half the job because you also have a new source. If zev zegarim is mutter, then it'll be mutter to use. And Ika Damri, some have a different version of the last part. Afilaman demer zev zegarim mutter. Kedera aser. The kedera is not in the same apat, right? It's not in the same category as a tanur. Rather, it was the same category really as the other earthenware that you use, right? Let's say to hold a dish or to eat from it. Why? Because over there, because whatever food you're putting, you put in the pot. So that pot is storing the food before it's ever heated. So therefore, you're using something which is usher first. And therefore, in that case, the kadera is just like the karas and the kosos, and not similar to the tanur, which would be zevazigari. Fine. Now, Amar Rav Yosef still speaking on this topic. Right, almost done with this topic. So Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yudah, Amar Shmuel, tanur she'esika b'klifei orla or b'kasher shel kilei kerem. So basically, very similar case we had before, a tanur which was heated up by an oven, right? That was heated up from orla or kilei kerem, or the wood from a vineyard that was planted with wheat. So chadash, if it's a new one, yutatz, and go ahead and break it. Yashan, if it's an older one, in other words, it's not, you're not heating in the isser anymore, then yutzan, just let it go ahead and cool off. And afabas apas, if you go ahead and bake the bread, Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, and I just quoted the other bryce earlier, hapas muteres. Rebbe says now the bread is mutter. And even though before we said the bread is asur, right? The Chachamim hapas asura, and the Chachamim said the pas is asur. So the Gemara says, we learned yesterday in Daf Yomi on Chav Vavim and Beis Vatan Ifcha. We learned the exact opposite. That Rebbe said that it's asur because the heat, right, comes from the kilayim kerem or the orla. Therefore, the bread is asur, and the Chachamim says it's mutter. So Shmuel Ifcha. Tani, first say yes. Shmuel did teach it the other way, right? Indeed, he did teach it that way. Or if you by saying, we can say Bialmak Savar Shmuel Halakha Rebbe Mechaverov Veloy Mechaverov. That normally Shmuel holds that the halacha is like Rebbe, but not when he only argues with an individual. But now when he argues with a chamim, now with the others, right? Lo Mechaverov. However, in this case, he wants the halacha is like Rebbe, even though he's arguing with a chamim that really it should be asur. So therefore, he wants it to be asur. People might mistake and say, "Hey, it's only halacha Rebbe mechaverov, lo mechaverov." Right? And therefore, I'm going to go ahead and teach it the opposite way to say that the Rabbanan were the one who said the bread is asur. Therefore, the halacha will be like the Rabbanan, and people will not make that mistake. Fine. 2 dots. So we're 6 lines from the bottom, So we talk about the case of the next case of that price we had yesterday was if you go ahead and we're talking about fire with the wood. Now, what about coals, right? Now, coals are basically you heat up the coals, and then the fire is basically gone, and now you just have the smoldering coals that create the heat. So he said over there, if you go ahead and you heat up and you use right the other wood, the wood from the orla of kilei kerem to go ahead and heat up the coals, then everybody holds the bread is mutter. So and Rav Yehuda Shmuel, so Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Rav Chia Barash, Amar Rav Yechon, Chad Omar Lo Yishanu Ela Gechalam Amos, Gechalam Lo Yishayis Asur. We're only talking about right, basically coals that were the smoldering, right? But ones that were the flames were coming out, right? That is actual. You're using the heat or the fire from the orla and the kilai kerem, and therefore that'll be aser. Now one says, no, even if the fire is flickering, right, and it's coming up from the coals, the bread is still mutter. So I understand, according to the opinion who holds that if it's going ahead and this fire, this flickering, on the coals, it's not just smoldering, but there's flames actually coming up. It makes sense why you say that the bread is aser, because there is you still have basically, since you have the flickering of the flames, that's still really coming from the original orla and the kilei kerem. So that's why the bread is aser. But according to the opinion who holds that lochshas is muteres, but if you hold that even if it's flickering and the flames are coming up, right? It's mutter. So past the aser, the yeshav eitzim, mutaras. So past this the aser, the yeshav eitzim pass the Rebbe hechi mishkachasla. How can you go ahead and find a case according to Rebbe where if you're saying that the flame are coming up, that's still not good enough to be basically putting the iser in the bread? So how can you ever have bread that's aser according to Rebbe, right? What's if the flames are coming up from the coals and those are mutter? Why is it any different than the case of the wood? Over there, when we say that the flame is mamish on the bread, right? That's when we say that the bread is getting from the isser of the orlan kilei keren. But if it's just at the bottom, it just there are flames in the coals, but it's not mamish next to the bread, then it would be mutter. So michal the rabbanon the pligi aleh the shari afilik shavuk connecto, right? So el-eitzim the isur l'rabbanon if that's the case, even then according to Rabbanon, where Rebbe says asur, Rabbanon says mutter. So even if the case where the bread is mamish, right, the flames are right with the bread. Where do you ever have a case with atzei asher or asur, right? It seems like any fire that comes from the orla kilei keren, not atzei asher, the orla kilei keren, all those cases. When would you ever find the isser? If we see that using the wood, right, for a source of heat is always mutter, even in the case of the bread. So so he says, no, we're talking about a case of b'shashifa, right? And you're right. When it says when it comes to fuel, once you burn it, basically you're burning the isser out of it, and therefore it's mutter. So when is it usher? You want to use wood? Okay, I'll tell you a case of the wood. Let's say you want to use it for sitting, for a bench, right? You want to make a bench out of the wood, right, from orla or from kilei keren. That's usher. So that's a case of where he's talking about. Fine. 3 lines from the top on Chav Zayin and Beis. Boy mine Rami Barachama B'Rav Chizda Tonash Yisuko B'Atzei Hektish. What about, all right, new case. We talked about Atzei Shera. We talked about Orla Kilei Keren. What about Hektish? Something which was consecrated for the use of the temple. So Shisiba it's a Hektish V'Alpha Ba Hapas, and he goes and he bakes bread. But Rabbanan Deshari Kamaisa, according to Rabbanan earlier, who said it's mutter in the case of. The Rabbanan said it's much in the case of the bread, in the case of Orla Kilei Keren. What about in the case of Hektish, right? The Shur goes as a might. Samalei, Hapas Asura. The bread is Asur. So says, yes, Ma Bein Zulu Orla. So why is the Hektish Asur and the Orla was mutter? Samarava Hachiashi, here's a comparison. Orla Batela Masayim. Orla, it can be bottle 1 and 200. However, Hektish, Afilu Me'elav lo bottle. But when it comes to Hektish, since it's never bottle, therefore we say the fire, right, is continuing from the Isser of Hektish, and therefore the bread cooked with wood that is Hektish would be Asr. Salamarava Ikashile Hakashi. Rather, if you had a question, this is the question. When you go ahead and you burn wood which is hektish, you violate me'ilah, right? Me'ilah is you're getting forbidden benefit. And v'hala mal hamasik, kol heichada mal hamasik nafke lechulin. There's a concept that once you perform me'ilah, you now have deconsecrated the object. So the question is like this: since I violated me'ilah by using this hektish wood for a fire to go ahead and heat up and bake my bread. So now, since I did me'ilah, I'm chai for that. So now the wood is no longer hektish; it's deconsecrated. I made it chulin. If I made it chulin, why should the bread be usher? So that's the question. Samra Papa, we're talking about not wood that was designated to Bedek Habayis to keep up the temple, right? Or for karbanos of kachei kachim. Rather, we're talking about the wood of shlamim. Right, the wood of shlamim. There's different levels of hektish. Shlamim is the lower level of the mechatas or an ola. Right, it's called kachi kalam. Right, now so we're talking about the wood from shlamim. Askinan. According to Rabbi Yehuda, damar hektish b'shegeg mischalal. According to normal cases, a person is something which is hektish and does a b'shegeg. He accidentally uses it for his own purposes. Then it's mischalal. B'mezid and mischalal. But if he goes ahead and he does it b'mezid, then he doesn't remove its kedusha, right? B'mezid my time alone. So since he's not violating me'ilah, me'ilah is only something which is done b'shogeg. If I accidentally use it, then I violated me'ilah. But if I do it on purpose, that's not me'ilah, right? Only if you accidentally do it, then you chayv a korban me'ilah, then you can get kapara for it. But if you do it on purpose, we don't even allow you to get kapara, right? So since he does it on purpose, right? He's not chayv for me'ilah, and therefore loy nafik l'chulin, right? And therefore it doesn't go out it doesn't become chulin. So shlamim namin kevin d'labar me'ilah ninu, and since shlamim it itself is not chayv for me'ilah because it's only kachei kalam, it's not right kachei kachim. right? It doesn't go l'chulin. And therefore, in our case, back to the wood in our case, we can say that the wood, even though it's hektish, it doesn't go l'chulin because there is no me'ilah, and therefore the bread would be yasser. Now the Gemara asks, so we're going to challenge on this concept. And anytime a person does me'ilah, it goes to chulin. So I will learn a brayso. Anything that's supposed to be burnt, there once you burn it, right? The ashes are mutter, right? The ashes are mutter because it's no longer whatever you burnt. It's considered to be something new and it's destroyed, and it's not like what it previously was, except for wood from avodah zarah, from an asherah tree, and also afer from hektish. So you see over there that hektish doesn't lose it once it burns, right? So you see it doesn't go right? It doesn't go. So Gemara says no. So liyalam aser, right? So afer hektish liyalam aser is always considered to be aser. So so maybe we're talking about a case of maybe the fire came. A person didn't go ahead and make the fire, and therefore, since he made the fire, there's me'ilah, and since he performed me'ilah, therefore it's not l'chulin, and therefore it should be mutter. Rather, the fire started on its own. Shenafa deleka me'aleha be'atzeh hektish delekinish denimo, and therefore no one violated me'ilah. If no one violated me'ilah, therefore the wood remains hektish. The wood remains hektish. Therefore, the isser is in the bread, and therefore that's the reason the bread is aser. And Rav Shmaya Amar ba'aysan shetuna geniza. Maybe we're talking about that which requires geniza. Now, those ashes that require geniza, the Tanya learned in Brisa, it says v'samu v'nachas v'samu kulo v'samu shalei fazer. So we darshan over there v'samu, and he shall go ahead and place them, referring to the ashes, right? So all these cases of when we include the ashes, right? Since over there it requires geniza, right? That these require putting it away, and therefore it's always usher even afterwards. So even the offer of the Trumas Adeshen, right? That there is no me'ilah with their burning, because since there's halachas what to do with the ashes after one removes it from the mizbeach, right? Where to put it, leave it there, make sure not to use it for other purposes. Therefore, we see that in this case, even after it's used, there is no me'ilah. Fine, tudas. Now we come back to psachim, whatever we just said. Put it aside. Let's get back to burning our chametz. So Amar Rav Yehuda, some Rav Yehuda, Amar Ein Bir Ela B'Sreifa. So now we're going to go through a couple levels of logic. The Gemara is going to flow. We'll go a little bit to the top of to the two dots on the top of the next blot, but it moves. So Tanya, we learn in the Brisa. Amar Rav Yehuda, Ein Bir Chametz Ela Sreifa. The only way you can destroy your chametz is by burning. B'Sreifa. And we actually learn it through a logical argument. Korban which is left over beyond its time. So the next morning you have to go. The halacha is by naisar. You have to go. The Torah says burn it. So by naisar there is no isser of ba'yira ba'yimatzeh. Right, a person should not go ahead and see it or find it. Nevertheless, it requires burning. So chametz sheishim ba'yira ba'yimatzeh lo kol shekin. So chametz, which the isurim of do not see it and do not find it, do apply. Lo kol shekein. Certainly, chametz has to be burnt. Shetoin sreifa, some are low. However, no, they said not a good argument. So kol din sha'ata don tchilaso lahachmir v'seifa lahakil. Ain't a din. Any halacha that you state that you want to go ahead and create a chumrah, but the chumrah is actually a kula, is not a good logic. Why? Lo matz eitzim l'sarfo ye yoshev batel. What? A person can't find wood. Since there's no wood here, I'm putter from destroying my chametz. I have no wood. I have to burn my wood. I can't start a fire. Well, I'm putter then. And the Torah says you have to destroy it. So obviously your logic is not good, because according to your logic, you're creating a kula. So Chazir Rabbi Yehuda v'dano dina din acher. So Rabbi Yehuda said darshan a different din. So he says no. Naisar iser b'achila v'chametz aser b'achila. Naisar has an Isra Achila, and Chametz is you can also eat. So man Naisar v'Sreifa, Av Chametz v'Sreifa, just like Naisar you have to go ahead and burn it. So to Chametz you have to burn it. So Amalo, they said no. Nevela tochiach, right? Nevela, an animal, a carcass that was found that was not shechted, right? That to just prove it. Shasur b'Achila v'Eino Tonat Sreifa. If you find a carcass, you don't have to destroy it. You don't have to burn it. So why would you say you have to burn Chametz? So then Hefresh, no, it's different, right? Naisar Asur b'Achila v'Hana. Naisar is forbidden for eating and also forbidden for benefit. So chametz aser b'achila v'hana, and chametz is also aser for eating and getting benefit. And man, Naisar tan sreifa, and therefore we can build like this. Just like by Naisar requires burning, af chametz tan sreifa. So too, chametz should require burning. Samarlo, he retorted, they said back to him, no, shohanizka yochiach. Right? We know the halachas of an animal that gores and it kills somebody. And you have to go ahead and kill the animal. And once you have a gemar din, that a judgment that it's asur, therefore you can't eat it, you can't benefit from it. That's called shar niska. So it's just shar niska yochiach shasur b'achila hana ve'ein turn sreifa. So that requires you can't eat it and you can't get hana. But there is no halacha. You have to go ahead and burn and destroy the shar niska, right? So the Gemara says no. Amalan hefresh. No, it's different. Naisar is serb achila uvahana the onish kares. When it comes to Naisar, so there's Isser Achila and there's Isser Hana, you can't eat it, you can't get benefit from it, and also attached to it, there's a punishment of Kares. The Chametz, and when it comes to Chametz, Aser B'Achila V'Hana V'Anish Kares. When it comes to Chametz, there's Isser Achila, there's Isser Hana, right? And you're also, the punishment is a Kares, right? You get cut off, right, from the world to come. So the Gemara says, no. Man Naisar B'Sreifa Af. Right, so therefore it's the same thing. And my nice chametz is the same. Therefore, you can say just like nice has to be burned, so too the chametz has to be burned, and both of them carry isra chila, isra na, and have a kares. So Gemara says Amar, they said no. Chelbo shel shor niska yochiach. What about the forbidden fats of every animal of a shor niska? Right, that if you go ahead and you consume that, there's kares there. So there is kares attached to a shor niska, to an animal that's supposed to be stoned, right? That animal has isra chila, can't eat it, you can't benefit from it, and if you go ahead and eat the chaylev of it, right, you're chayiv kares, but does not require burning. So say the same thing by chametz. Chametz should not require burning. So Chazar, Rabbi Yehuda, V'dan Dino Acher. So he said another halach. So he said, okay, I have another logical argument. So Naisar Yeshim Bal Tasiru, the Chametz Bal Tasiru, right? The Chametz, by Naisar, there's a special issue, you can't leave it over. By Chametz, you also can't leave it over. Can't leave it over into Pesach. You have to destroy it before. And Man Naisar B'Sreifa, Chametz was saying, just like by Naisar, once it comes to the past time, you have to go ahead and burn it. So to Chametz, when it should come to the past time, you should go, you have to burn it. Samarlo, Asham Taloi, V'chatas Ha'if Habala Safek. Right? So he said, no, what about a case of an asham talui, an asham which is brought for a person, he's not sure if he made a mistake, right? He did an action, he wasn't clear if the action was the isser, if he ate the isser or not, because he ate one thing and he only heard afterwards and he didn't know, and until he's sure, he brings an asham talui or a chatas oif that one brings also a similar offering of a bird offering for an avera or a suffix. They said, maybe that could argue with you. Shehein v'balsa siru. That the halacha by them is that you should not go ahead and leave them over, right? Any of meat over there is not left over, right? But we say over there, shanu amim b'seifa, the ata kfura, right? That we say actually you burn those things that are left over, but you, Rabbi Yehuda, hold, right? The kfura, right? You bury it. You're not chayiv to go ahead and burn it, right? And therefore, right, or you destroy it, you put it in another place, but you don't have to burn it. So Shasak Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was quiet, right? He said, because he hit him with his own arguments. In that case, over there, when you leave it over, you don't have to go ahead and burn it. So to Chametz, you shouldn't have to go ahead and burn it. And Amar Rav Yosef, and now Hani Dami Inchi, this is what people make the sayings, right? Kapa dechata nagara begava nisaf chardola, right? Basically, a person who makes a dish, right? Is that with that dish that he burns his tongue with the mustard, and Abayis is another. Basically, the meaning is that his own arguments, right? He hung his right. He gave himself basically a rope to hang himself, right? His own arguments that over there by the case of the Asham Talui that you bury it, basically was that which buried his argument here. And similarly, Amar Abaye, Sadana Sadina Yosef Midvilya De Mishtalim, right? The person who makes the handcuffs, right? The shackles. He is the person who ends up in those handcuffs, in those shackles. And Rav Amar, Gaya Begira Mikdil, and Midvil Yada Mishtalim, right? The person who goes ahead and builds arrows, he is killed by his own arrows. So Rabbi Yehuda also over here, his argument was over there, and basically they destroyed Rabbi Yehuda's svara with Rabbi Yehuda's own opinion. All right, we'll stop here at the two dots. Yishkoyach, everybody. Sunday, Mitzvah Shem. We'll get back to the regular schedule of anyway, regular, but 7:00 Sunday morning, Mitzvah Shem. And everyone have a wonderful day and a good Erev Shabbos and a good Shabbos. Shkoyach.